Hello and welcome to part 2 of the motorcycle riding around Launceston. In this clip I'm going from Waverley, one of Launceston's eastern suburbs, I guess, to White Hills, which is a locality in the south of Launceston, on the way to Ben Lomond, which is the ski fields out of Launceston. Making that ride via Abels Hill Rd. So if you want to follow the map or the ride, you can Google Abels Hill Rd and find out where I went. When I post the last clip, I'll include a map that'll show the entire journey. In the last video I was talking about the Australian electoral process and the outcome of the election, which was held on the 21st of May, and I got part way through the process of explaining that, so I thought I would continue with that today. If you don't want to know about the Australian electoral process, or you figure you know enough about it already, as I said before, turn down the volume and just enjoy the scenery. Otherwise I'll just continue to talk, and hopefully I'll explain in a bit more detail some of the things that go into making up a government. So as I said in the last video, we have two chambers, or a bicameral system, a parliamentary system in Australia: the House of Representatives, which has 151 members, and the Senate, which has 76 members. At the moment, according to today's count, the Australian Labor Party have 75 seats in the lower house, the Liberal National Party have 57, Independents 10, Greens 3, Other 2, giving a total of 72, and 4 seats are still in doubt. Now, I guess it's theoretically possible that the Labor Party could win all 4 of those seats, in which case they would govern in their own right. But even if they only win one of those seats, they will get to govern as a majority government. If they win none of them, and the other 4 seats go across the Liberal National Party, the Independents, the Greens and the others and so on, none of those groupings have enough seats to govern by themselves, and it's unlikely that any of them would combine with another to form a government. So even if all the 10 independents combined with the Liberal National Party, that would only give them 67, and the independents seem to have not a lot in common with the Liberal National Party, so it's unlikely that they would combine in a coalition. So Anthony Albanese gets to be the Prime Minister. The last video I talked at the end a little bit about how we change the government as opposed to changing the Prime Minister. And I mentioned that we'd gone through a period of changing Prime Ministers on a regular basis, but that didn't necessarily change the government. It simply meant that the party that was in charge decided that the person who was leading the party was no longer fit for the job and had to be removed. There are ways to change the government. As I said, the first one of those is that the House of Representatives, that is the lower house, would pass a vote of no confidence in the Prime Minister. Convention says that if you lose a vote of confidence, or a vote of no confidence is passed in you, then the right thing to do is tender your resignation as Prime Minister and call on the Governor-General to either invite somebody else to form a government, or if that's not possible, then call an election. The second way is for the government to not have supply, that is, not have authority to spend money. The High Court of Australia has said that any time the government wants to spend money, it has to pass a piece of legislation that says it can spend that money. And these pieces of legislation are generally called appropriation bills. By convention, the lower house, or the House of Representatives, is the house where those bills originate, and the Senate is not supposed to oppose them. If they've been passed in the People's House, they're supposed to be passed in the upper house, and the money is then spent. In 1975, the Senate decided, for a variety of reasons which I won't go into at the moment, that they would not pass money bills or appropriation bills, and they would deny the government supply. So the government had no money. It had no authority to spend money, and after a Mexican standoff that lasted a couple of months, the Governor-General, who under the powers of the Constitution has the authority to do so, dismissed the government of the day, appointed the opposition leader Malcolm Fraser as the Prime Minister with instructions that he call an election, which he did, and the Liberal Country Party, as they were called then, won the election and were in government from then, 1975 until 1983. So there are ways to change the government. By convention, what the Senate did should not have happened, but conventions only exist while everybody obeys them. And if somebody decides to break a convention, then it ceases to be a convention, and both sides will then say, well, you didn't obey the convention, so there's no reason why we should either. So getting back to the electoral process, we've cast our votes, the result is pretty well known, and a government has been formed. Under the rules of the Australian Labor Party, the caucus, that is the elected members of Parliament, gets to decide which people or which members of the caucus become ministers in the government. I'll come back and explain about ministers in a moment, and which members become part of the cabinet. The cabinet is the sort of inner grouping of ministers that make some of the more important decisions for the government. The Prime Minister gets to decide who gets what portfolio, but the elected members decide which individuals are elected to ministerial positions. And that is worked out on a factional basis, in that within the Labor Party there are various groupings, or what they call factions. And in order to keep everybody happy, everybody's faction gets a certain number of positions allocated to them. Now, under the Westminster system and under the parliamentary system that we work on in Australia, the government has responsibility for various things like defence, social security or social welfare, health, education, foreign affairs, trade, and so on. Some of these matters, most of these matters, are set out in the Constitution. The Constitution says that the Commonwealth Government has responsibility for various things, and the state government have responsibility for various things as well. Now, in Australia, there is a duplication of those things. For example, health and education are both clearly defined within the Constitution as being matters that are the responsibility of state government. So we have a state minister for education and a state minister for health, and so on. Other matters, such as those to do with external powers and defending the nation, like foreign affairs, trade and defence, are clearly matters for the Commonwealth Government, as is the currency. But we also have a Minister for Health at the federal level and a Minister for Education, even though those people don't have any hospitals or schools or students or doctors and so on. The reason we have that is because the Commonwealth Government has by far the biggest share of revenue, because it has the income taxing powers and also has the powers to raise and regulate the GST, the Goods and Services Tax. And although the money from the GST is distributed to the states, it's raised by the Commonwealth. So the Commonwealth has the biggest bucket of money, and therefore perhaps rightly feels, well, since we have the money, we have the right to have some input into what you do with the money. So we will give you money, but we will have a minister who has a similar responsibility for education, health and so on, and he or she will have some input into how federal money is distributed to the states and what they do with it. So that's kind of explains it a little bit, but to get to the point of it, under the parliamentary system, the ministers are accountable to the Parliament. By convention, most of the ministerial positions are allocated to people in the lower house or in the House of Representatives. Some are in the Senate, but most of them are in the lower house or the House of Representatives. And the reason for that is, of course, that's where the government is made or unmade, but also, since it's the People's House, it's where representatives of the government and of the opposition can question the minister about things to do with that minister's portfolio. And how that works is that every day in the parliaments, when Parliament is sitting, and Parliament doesn't sit every day of the year, it only sits a certain number of days of the year, but on the days of the year that it does sit, the Parliament has a period of time, which I think is an hour, that's called question time. And in question time, members of the opposition, or people who are not members of the government, have the right to, providing they get the call from the Speaker, to ask a minister a question. And their question can be about anything to do with the functioning of that minister's department, or a decision that minister has made, or the outcome of a decision that the minister has made. In practice, what happens is a lot of the question time is taken up with what are called Dorothy Dixes. Dorothy Dixes are questions where the government members ask the minister a question about something they already know the answer to, but allow the minister to spend 2 or 3 minutes waffling on about government policy, not actually saying anything, and not specifically addressing any particular issue, but just saying what the government is doing lately, and therefore not really being accountable. It depends upon the speaker at the time whether that process continues or not. The speaker may say, well, okay, you've had enough time to answer that question, sit down now and let's move on to the next question. Or if the speaker is not so strong, then the minister will speak for his full 3 minutes and say nothing. So it's a bit of a mixed bag system, but the idea is that the minister is accountable to the Parliament, and the Parliament can ask questions of the minister. Under that ministerial system, under the Westminster system on which our Parliament is based, ministers bear responsibility for the actions of their department and for the actions of their staff. Their staff are employed. Members of Parliament get an allocation of a certain number of staff to run their offices, run their parliamentary office and their electoral office. And those people are employed entirely at the behest of the Member of Parliament, who can say at any stage to somebody, you're fired because you're not doing your job well or whatever. I don't have to give you a reason, you're fired. The Minister, for example, let's take the Minister for Education. There is a department, a Commonwealth Department of Education, which the Minister for Education administers. And he or she, whoever the minister is, under the Convention of Ministerial Responsibility, is accountable for the actions of the department. And that doesn't mean that the minister has to know about every low-grade clerk in the Department of Education, every piece of paper he handles, or that clerk handles. But when major decisions are taken by the department, they are meant to be approved by the minister. So the head of the department, the public service head, who I think in these days is still called the permanent secretary or might be called the chief executive or some other name, but the person who is the head of the Department of Education is supposed to regularly report to the minister about things that the department is doing, and if the department has made major decisions, the minister is supposed to be informed of those and approve of them. By the same token, the minister says, I want such and such a thing to be done. This is government policy and I want this thing to be done. He therefore tells the head of the department, this is the government's policy, get it done, get on the process of making it happen and get it done. And the permanent head of the department then carries out the ministerial wishes. But under the Convention of Ministerial Responsibility, if the department engages in activity that is questionable, that is thought to be not proper, that may be even illegal or corrupt, then the minister is meant to accept responsibility for that. And it's sometimes the minister, to use the language of the British Parliament, would consider his or her position and decide, well, okay, I probably should resign from the ministry because of what I've done, or because of what my department has done. And the department has done this either with my knowledge or approval, or even if without my knowledge or approval, it's been done, and I'm the minister, and therefore I'm responsible. Now, as I said earlier, conventions only work while everybody agrees to them and everybody follows them, and when people cease to follow them, the convention ceases to exist, and it stops having meaning. Now, to give you an example, perhaps, of ministerial responsibility or a department doing something and the minister not accepting responsibility for it, I'll refer you to a matter that was called robo-debt. Robo-debt was a situation where the Department of Social Security determined that people who were receiving social welfare benefits of some sort were being overpaid. What had to happen was the people who were receiving this particular benefit were supposed to report their income to the Department of Social Security on a regular basis. Some of those people were in part-time or casual employment, and some months they'd earn a lot of money and the next month they'd earn not much money, or perhaps even no money. Now, the month that they earned a lot of money, the Department of Social Security's automated computer system would look at their income and say, well, based on what you've reported to us and all the other factors that can be programmed into an automated program, we say you've earned this amount of money for the year and therefore you've been overpaid your Social Security benefits, and we demand that you pay them back. And so they sent letters to all these people, and many people just paid the money back because they thought, well, we've made a mistake in my income, I did do something wrong and I've paid it back, or I've been paid a benefit I wasn't entitled to and I've paid it back. And the government collected $750 million. That's $750 million from people who were allegedly overpaid. Now, at the time that they instituted, on the minister's behest, this robo-debt clawback of Social Security, the department and the minister were advised that the actions that they were about to take were illegal. They were illegal because the taking of money from people's bank accounts could only be done after there was human oversight, after an actual person had looked at all the details and said, yes, this is right, rather than just an automated computer system. The government went ahead with the system anyway. At some stage, some of the people who were affected by this claim decided they would not pay the money back, and they brought a class action against the government, which the government lost in the federal court. And the federal court ruled that the actions of the Department of Social Security were illegal and that the money should be returned to those people. So the $750 million, the $750 million that they collected from people wrongfully, was returned to those people. And the Department of Social Security acknowledged that they had acted wrongly. I suppose that's the best way to describe it. But the minister accepted no responsibility. Under the Convention of Ministerial Responsibility, you would have expected that that minister would have resigned his portfolio or been dismissed by the Prime Minister. But the minister accepted no responsibility and did not resign. And so there were sort of no consequences of doing that. Now, in a situation like that, there is literally nothing that anyone can do. The government has the numbers in the lower house to keep the minister in his or her position, and there's literally nothing that can be done about it. Now, this video is about to come to an end, so I hope I've explained a little bit more about the Australian electoral process. I hope you've enjoyed that and it's enlightened you a little bit. I also hope you've enjoyed the Tasmanian scenery in this part of the ride, and I will talk to you again when I am dealing with the third clip in the process. So thank you for watching, and I will talk to you again shortly.